Welcome back to the channel. We're going to continue working on our 1993 Mustang GT convertible. We have it on the trailer because, well, it's a Ford. Yeah, that's right. 10 seconds in, I'm already making fun of Ford. Actually, we have it on the trailer because we need to take it to a different shop to work on it. If you don't know why I can't work in the old shop, link's up there. It'll explain all that. But somebody reached out to me from YouTube and said, hey, I could use his shop, so we're going to bring it there so that I can record everything. Otherwise, you're not really going to be able to see it if I work underneath the car. Did that sound believable? I'm actually putting it on a lift because I'm a princess and I can't work on the ground anymore. So we're gonna have it up on the lift. You guys can see what we're doing, and I don't have to crawl underneath it. So let's get it over to his shop and introduce him. So I'm at the shop that we're gonna be using for right now, at least temporarily, with Mike from Enthusiast Mechanic. Check him out on YouTube. Subscribe to his channel. Show him some love because he's given me a huge hand getting this car done. So let's get to it. We have a few leaks to take care of, and we're not the first somebodies that have been here, but we're going to do it the right way. Our first leak is the exhaust. It's pretty much just rotted out, and the tape that was on there just isn't holding anymore. So we're going to replace the exhaust from the cat back. We also have a tranny fluid leak from that non-binary dipstick. So we're going to do all this at the same time. We'll pull the exhaust off first to get it out of our way to work on the trans a little bit easier. We're also going to change the trans filter just because we're here. First, we're going to unbolt our exhaust from our H-pipe. Bolts are pretty rusty in there, but I was feeling pretty brave and decided to go for it and take them out without using any heat. Let's see how this strategy pays off. So far, so good. Haven't broken anything yet. Alright, we got both of our flanges loose. Pipes are still kind of rusted on there. Guess we didn't need those bolts. We have a couple hangers way up here, just in front of the axle. Unbolt those. Get a wrench on the other side. And of course, since we didn't care if we broke them, they came all the way out. Move back to the tailpipe. We'll just pry this rubber hanger off of its mount. We'll leave it on the exhaust. We'll take it off later. Just easier. And I was offered a Sawzall to cut this, but this shop uses those fancy saw blades with teeth, and I was afraid I might hurt myself, so I just decided to He-Man it and bend that pipe in half. And then shove it up over the axle. Toss that in a pile. And then we'll head on to the other side. We'll pry our rubber hanger off in front of the axle. This side didn't have a nut and a bolt in it. I used a different bracket on the other side. Still can't get this front piece loose. Get the flange back. Give it a little tap, and we'll get the actual tool for that. There we go. Slide our rubber mount off the back of the tailpipe. And now, Hulk fold. I'm still refusing the saw blade with teeth. I don't want to become accustomed to those fancy tools. So, we're just going to struggle. Probably takes just as much time to do this as it would to cut it. This is actually more fun. Almost. There we go. In the pile. And now that that's out of the way, we can take our H-pipe out. Should be pretty easy since we replaced those studs on the manifolds when we put the engine back in. So we're going to unplug our oxygen sensors. One on each side. We can get to the trans dipstick without taking this out, but you won't be able to see what I'm doing, and it's really not that hard.
And a lug extension. Get those bolts out of the manifold. Actually, nuts. And they come right out. I'm doing my best to try not to lose the nut in there. And my best wasn't good enough. I'm trying to knock the flange off. It's kind of stuck on those studs. We got it to slide down. So now we can slide our H-pipe back. There's two L-shaped hooks that just slide straight into rubber mounts. So it just slides straight back. And we'll set that off to the side. Somebody's been here before. They just slammed a handful of RTV silicone up on that dipstick to try to seal the leak. There's just an O-ring in there that gets dried out and starts leaking. So I guess we could make fun of them for the job that they did, but it wasn't leaking. At least not until I pulled the engine and disturbed it a little bit. So I guess their solution worked, and it was a whole lot easier than doing it the right way. We can't make fun of them. So we just have to pull the bolt out that goes through the bell housing. Also holds the trans dipstick in. And then wiggle it out of there and break that RTV silicone out, at least what's still holding it together. Then we'll clean it all off of there. We put a jack stand underneath the tail shaft of the trans. That way we can pull this mount out. Give us a little more room to work on our trans pan, and we can drop the trans down a little bit to give us some room to clean out that silicone that they left for us. Pull all the bolts out of our trans pan. Now this would be the part where you would normally just pull the drain plug out and drain it so you don't make a huge mess, but engineers didn't think we needed a drain plug. Of course, they're going to blame corporate, saying they didn't want to spend the money to put a drain plug in it, and that's why they didn't do it. But we all know it's because those engineers just hate mechanics. So we're just going to make a huge mess. Because, well, that's what I'm good at. So we left two bolts in the back. We're going to pull the front down a little bit and drain a little bit. Of course, it doesn't matter. It still makes a mess. And we'll pull our last two bolts out. And slowly let it down. Hopefully not spilling it all over me and everything else. And now we can pull our filter out. These screws that hold it in. And a little wiggle and pull. And more mess. Fluid is pretty clean. I don't know when this was done last, but since I was here, I figured I might as well do it now. Slide our new filter up there. Start our bolts by hand. And run them in there and torque them down to manufacturer specs. And now on to our dipstick. We cleaned all of our silicone off of there. We put our new O-ring on. So now we just gotta weasel it back up there, around the trans lines, over the hill and through the woods. This is actually my second attempt because I went over the woods and through the hill and that didn't work out. So now we're trying it the right way. Get it dropped in there, we can put our bolt in. We do have the back of the trans dropped down a little bit to make it easier to get in here and work on it. That's why I dropped that cross member. One of the reasons. And we go ahead and spin it as far as we can by hand, and then we'll tighten it down. Now we can throw our trans pan and gasket back up there. You thread all the bolts through the gasket, it holds it in place. The holes in the gasket are a little bit smaller than the bolts, so it holds the bolts at the same time. And we'll zip them all in there. Take our chances that we're not going to strip out that trans. We did have a close call. And we'll go back over it, snug them up a little more. All the Milwaukee fanboys are losing their mind because I'm using Milwaukee tools. And we're going to go back over it with our torque wrench. Tighten it down to manufacturer specs because I'm all about precision. We can put our trans cross member back up there. Let our bolt through. Just take out one side and let it hang down. We can put our nuts back on our trans mount. Let our trans sit down there. And tighten everything up. Now we're ready to throw our H-pipe back up there. Our cat assembly, whatever you want to call it. Slide our little hooks into their rubber mounts. At the same time, we also have to get those flanges centered up there. Get it past the studs. Move the flanges around so that they're not getting snagged on anything. Not a whole lot of room in there. And you got to kind of do all three at once. Both of the fronts and then the mounts in the back. I guess it's 4 if you count each of the rubber mounts individually. So we'll get our nuts started and we'll tighten them all up. Plug in our O2 sensor. And tighten up this side. I did take off the heat shield from the cat on the driver's side because it was just rattling around in there, and other than listening to it later, I just took it off now. We're already missing one side of it anyway. Plug in our other oxygen sensor. Now we're ready to start putting the rest of our exhaust up. And I don't think I could name a vehicle that has more aftermarket options for an exhaust than a Fox Body Mustang. There's so many different sets out there, ranging from $200 to $2,000, and even a little higher than that. I guess it just depends on how shiny you want it and what do you want it to sound like. I was less worried about the sound coming from the exhaust and more worried about the sound coming from my wallet, so I went with the cheap exhaust because, well, I'm not going to get any more money if I put a $2,000 exhaust on it or I put a $200 exhaust on it. It's got a new exhaust. If the new owner doesn't like it, they can spend the $2,000 to have the one that they do like. But let's be realistic. They're just going to drive it like this because it sounds just fine, like the factory exhaust did. So we're just going to assemble our exhaust. I'm not going to clamp anything up just yet. Just going to let it hang here. Get it all set in place. Make sure we got all the parts in the right spot. We could put our hanger on the passenger side tailpipe. We could have put a little grease on there, but what fun is that? We're going to do it dry. We'll slide the hanger up on the stud on the body. Again, without lube. There we go. Put our hanger on the other side. Struggle. And before we put that one up, we need to put this bracket on, because we're not going to be able to get to it later. There's not a whole lot of room in there. You have to use nuts and bolts to bolt it to the back of the muffler, and then tighten it down. This side, we were able to get the rubber mount on, and then bolt the muffler to it. There was a little more room. Tighten those bolts down. Everything should be in its hangers and lined up so we can start putting our clamps on. We'll get them all started and we'll fine tune where we want everything, and then we'll tighten them down, lock them in place. We got all our clamps on, and we'll snug them up. A little bit on each side. Go back and forth as you tighten them down. We'll tighten up to our H-pipe. A couple more clamps back here, and we're done. Now we can add our tranny fluid, or gender neutral shift juice if we're being politically correct, so that we can actually drive this thing out of here and don't have to push it. We'll also verify that our trans gasket's in there and not leaking, and our O-ring for our dipstick is also not leaking. I'm not sure which one was leaking worse, but they were both leaking, leaving puddles pretty good. You pretty much had to add a quart of trans fluid every time you wanted to drive it.
Well, we got everything done underneath the car up on the lift that we needed to get done. The rest of the mechanical work, I'm pretty sure I can get done on the ground. I'm not that much of a princess. Yet. So thanks to Mike for letting us use his shop, because without him, this video wouldn't have been possible. If you guys want to tell him thanks yourself, there's a link in the description to his channel, The Enthusiast Mechanic. Stop by one of his videos, tell him thanks, or subscribe to his channel for more car content. If you're one of the experts that likes to tell me everything I did wrong, while you're down in the description, there's also a link to e-manual online and a discount code. Pick up a manual, read through it, and you can tell me everything I did wrong on this job and every other job for that matter. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.